Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name's Amy Gill and I'm the UC Devices Business Manager here at Avoira. Today's the first in a series of Avoira sessions where we'll be looking at different products from different vendors. We've paired up with Polly today to look at the video solutions for your meeting rooms. So we're going to be specifically focusing on the video bars, so the Studio USB, the Studio X30 and the Studio X50. But we also want to give you some more insight into the service wrap that we can offer as Avoira around those endpoints and some reasons to choose us as your trusted advisor for any Poly project that you're undertaking. I'll now hand you over to Neil Fluester, who is Product Director at Poly. Neil, for the people that don't know about Poly, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, Amy, and thanks for joining me and let me come on to your webinar here. For those that don't know about Poly, Poly is the coming together of two industry great organizations. The legendary speakerphone, Spiderphones, you're all familiar with Poly Spiderphones in most of your meeting rooms, and Polycom video conferencing together with Plantronics, Bluetooth headsets in the contact center. And we as the two organizations came together about 18 months ago with this new brand Poly to try and deliver some solutions across our portfolio to users at home, in the meeting room, on the go, no matter where you are, any device, anywhere, to anyone.
And for the organisations that are starting to go back into the office now, what are the options on the table for them for the meeting rooms and the video solutions?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that from our customers, from the Avoira customers out there. There was this initial kind of evacuation from the office when lockdown happened, and everyone was kind of scrabbling around trying to find headsets and webcams to try and work at home. It was a kind of what we would call survival phase, where everyone was trying to survive and to try and find the right solutions to make themselves work. But now more so, we're seeing people starting to go back to meeting spaces and meeting rooms. And I think one of the interesting things is that there are different meeting spaces in different organizations. So we have, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, some different camera solutions for those spaces. In the smaller, more informal rooms, we have our Studio USB. It's a BYOD type device, allows a user to come in with their laptop or their Mac and literally just plug in a USB cable and to fire that up and to just use it as a very high-end webcam, speakers and microphone to really enhance the experience that they get from what their built-in speaker and microphones can provide them. Moving up to the sort of more larger, more formal rooms, we've got the Studio X series, the X standing for extra, and there is a built-in video codec within these devices that allows them to act as the kind of compute. So whilst you can come in and still use it as a BYOD device, it actually has the built-in Microsoft Teams or Starleaf or GoToMeeting applications inside the bar itself. So it has that technology and capabilities in the device itself.
And obviously with COVID at the moment, Neil, there's a lot of challenges around shared spaces and, touch control of devices. How do these endpoints make their way around that?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Unless you're going to have people sort of following people around with antibac and a bottle of Domestos in all the meeting rooms and wiping down after every meeting, it is a real challenge. The touchless and touch screen devices and touch panels in the desk have been a real growth area in many meeting rooms. Everyone wants to move away from the remote control that used to adorn the desk. But the challenge now, again, if you've got a meeting room with different people using it during the day, having touch screens and touch controls is a real challenge. Now, Poly and Microsoft have come together with a feature that we've enabled through our X series solution called Proximity Join. What Proximity Join is the capability to be able to start the meeting and control the meeting from your mobile phone, but then be able to transfer it into the meeting room itself. You can also use the Teams client on your laptop or Mac device, again, to drive the experience, so you don't have to touch those the buttons in the room. So you can share content using your Teams client on your laptop to the Poly Studio X series in the meeting room. Or, as I say, you could use it as a USB camera, microphone and speaker device in the meeting room to allow us to get that really great quality Poly audio and video into the meeting room onto a Teams call.
You mentioned Teams quite a lot there, Neil. So obviously everybody's using Teams at the moment, but there are other ecosystems out there that people are using. How do we bridge the gap with those ones as well with these products?
Yeah, it's again a really good point. A lot of customers, whilst they standardize on something like Teams as their default platform that they're using most of the time, one of the biggest challenges is you can't control who you get invited, what meetings you get invited into. So you might have a supplier that tends to use Starleaf or GoToMeeting, and the ability to be able to still handle those calls and not have to say, well, yeah, sorry, we don't speak Starleaf, we don't speak GoToMeeting, we can't call you. You wouldn't expect your mobile phone, if someone says, hey, can you call me on Vodafone and you're on O2, you wouldn't expect not to be able to call between these multiple platforms. And the same now should be true for video. And what Poly has enabled through our open PolyOS ecosystem integration is the ability that you can have that standardized platform and use Teams most of the time, but still be able to join other ecosystem platforms for that, 10 or 20% of the time when you're joining that supplier, joining that customer meeting. Again, that can either be through a native application on the devices, or it can be via just using a USB. Let's say you want to call someone on Facebook video, for example, we can connect through to that. And I know that Avoira, yourselves have this support not only for Teams, but you also look after Starleaf and GoToMeeting, which again our Poly Studio X series, as well as the Studio USB, could again work on all those, as well as other ecosystem partners out there in the industry.
We do, absolutely. And I suppose that's part of the service wrap that we offer. So when we're doing the site surveys, the demonstrations, the proof of concept, we can have a look at what you've got in place, what you want to use, and make sure we tailor the solution around the Poly product set and make it perfect for you. So in terms of hybrid working, then this new approach that everyone's now having to take, how do we stop people feeling isolated when they are working away from the usual office environments?
Yeah, it's it's a challenge at the moment where you're going to have some people in the organization that are going to want to return to work, and some people that maybe want to stay at home. There's a real challenge. Some people maybe don't have the space at home to set up a dedicated office space and will want to, as soon as they can, go back to the office, whereas other people will want to, have that work-life balance, spend more time with their family and kids, or maybe that they are isolating at home, looking after or homeschooling at the moment, and it's a real challenge. Now, again, what differentiates Poly solutions from our competitors is that we actually have a lot of artificial intelligence built into our camera technology. What I wanted to do is just show the viewers of the webinar a little bit under the hood of what goes on inside our cameras. So I'm going to bring up the raw output of our camera. So this view that you're seeing on the screen at the moment is taken from our Poly Studio device. And there's a couple of things that are going on that I wanted to kind of explain through. The first is you see the image looks a little bit kind of weird and distorted. It's kind of pin cushioned, as we'd call it. Now, we do that because the studio has a very wide angle field of view, 120-degree field of view, so you can put it into small huddle rooms. But what we don't want is, with that 120-degree field of view, is to get what's called fish-eyeing, where you get sort of bowed ceilings and everyone looks like they've had a few too many pies over lockdown. So we de-warp the image to make sure that everyone's represented in the right sort of physical size, and to make sure that all of the lines of the room are perfectly straight. Now, the other thing you can see that's going on here is the facial recognition that's happening as people are in the room here. So the green boxes over people's faces is the facial recognition that's happening. Now, we do a couple of things with that. Firstly, we count the number of participants in the meeting room. We put that into the logs. Really powerful analytics at the moment, where you want to make sure that you don't have too many people packed into a meeting room. But we also use this for camera tracking. So as people are speaking, we're zooming into that person so that the people on the far end that couldn't make it into the office aren't looking down a long table like this. They're actually framing in and following the conversation as it moves around the room. Now, the other thing you can see is that there's a dark blue square around the people in the room there, and that's showing us the area of interest. So that's where we should be looking. That's where the action is happening at the moment. And then lastly, you'll see there's a cyan vertical bar which is moving around the screen. And this is a sound source locating or audio triangulation happening to make sure that it's a real person talking and not just a picture on the wall. And this is one of the reasons actually why Poly now can track people where face face masks in the meeting or in an office, because we're not just using the facial recognition, we're actually adding that with sound source location and audio triangulation to make sure that's a real human. So that's what happens under the hood in the meeting. Let's show you what that actually looks like to somebody at the far end, not looking down this long table, but actually following the conversation around the meeting room. So here is that same meeting produced using our Poly Studio device. And again, all this is happening in the studio itself. So as Alan talks, it's zoomed in on Alan, and as Gabriella goes to talk, it smoothly pans across to Gabriella to follow the conversation. As Diana then comes to talk, again, it will smoothly pan across to Diana. So again, the far end participant who's sheltering at home, not in this meeting room, is getting a really nicely produced meeting. Now the AI then looks that Diana and Gabriella are talking between each other, so we'll actually frame both of them on screen at the same time. And then as someone slightly further away comes into the meeting room, we actually do a cut. So rather than a big wipe across to them, the AI engine says, okay, you're slightly further away, I'll do a cut. Same happens here with David as he comes in. He's further away and we do the cut. Now, when David and the other participant talk further away, what we can then do is the AI says, okay, I can see you're further away, and it does a split screen, or what we call conversation mode, where actually, again, the far end participant will then see both people speaking at the same time. So again, this AI intelligence inside our cameras producing the solution to make sure that people working from home that can't make it into the office get a really nice experience and don't feel like a picture on the wall or a third-party citizen. They're right and following the conversation in the meeting room.
Okay, so that looks great for the video side of things. What about the audio side and the distractions that can come with working from home?
I'm sure we've all been on meetings where you've been in that experience. Can everyone go on mute, please? Because someone's dog's barking or someone's forgotten to go on mute and just been distracted and gotten to something else. Poly has technology in our video devices, our conference phones, telephony devices, as well as even some of our headsets now, that allows us to block out non-human speech from disrupting the call. Because what we don't want is that rustling of paper, eating the crisps, and that. Can everyone go on mute? We want you to concentrate on your meeting, not the technology. So you can continue doing what you're doing without having to think, oh, I've forgotten to go on mute and that. So we have technology, and I'm going to do a live demonstration now of a technology called noise block. And what noise block is a capability to differentiate the human speech from unwanted background noise, typing on keyboards and rustling of paper. So as I'm talking here, you can obviously hear me. I have my classic piece of plastic here, which I use. And what will happen is, as I'm not talking, you will then not hear me scrunching the plastic here. So noise block allows us to block out and then unmute and mute the mic depending on if there's human speech or background noise, eating crisps, typing away on the keyboard, and it will then remove that from disrupting the call. And this is, again, is a real challenge when you've got people at home that are in environments that aren't necessarily acoustically treated or have that level of being able to isolate themselves away from the rest of their family, making noise and such like. So noise block and the acoustic fence technology is great and across the Poly portfolio, headsets, handsets, conference phones, and video devices.
So along with everything else then, in terms of meeting rooms, as we're used to them in an office space now, obviously we've got to consider social distancing, that type of thing. How are we going to get past that using these devices?
Yeah, there's an interesting report that one of the analysts did recently where they said that the large meeting rooms are now the medium meeting rooms, the medium meeting rooms are now the huddle rooms, and the huddle rooms are now the personal rooms, because we've got to be able to distance ourselves and provide that 2 meters distancing and keep that safe separation between our participants in the meeting room. You've already seen the capability of being able to count the faces in the meeting room, and again, that technology is there to be able to then look and make sure that your rooms are being used properly with the right number of people. But again, Poly has solutions not just for one type of room, but for every size of room. And obviously, Avoira has the ability to go in and meet with the customers, look at the spaces, provide a site survey and make sure that your rooms are right sized with the equipment. The Studio USB, again, is a great device for more of the informal spaces. Bring your own device. You can literally drop it on top of the screen and it will work as a USB enhanced webcam audio device in the meeting room, but with those smarts built in. So although it's just a USB device, it does the tracking, it does the framing in those meeting spaces. Moving up to the X series, again, that adds the extra capabilities of not having to have a computer or a laptop running the call. We can actually run the call in the device itself. The X30 designed for smaller rooms, traditionally what we would call sort of 4 to 6, which are now 2 to 3, I would guess, with regards to separation. And then the X50, which again, we originally launched it pre-COVID, it's kind of 10-seater meeting rooms, but that's now dropping down to sort of 4, 5, and 6-seater meeting spaces. And then at the larger end, we've got some of our more complicated solutions, which again, Avoira with their great AV integration capabilities can then do things like integrating ceiling microphones, multiple screens, and all of that complex AV integration for those larger meeting spaces and boardroom spaces. One thing I also wanted to add in is, again, we talked a little bit about AI, but Poly has some new technology that we've introduced onto our devices, which allow us to actually track and to film live in real time a presenter moving around. Now, this is great for classrooms, great for education, but also great for, again, training rooms, or if you're doing more kind of individual addresses to your staff. So although the camera is fixed, using that facial recognition and tracking, we can actually live track the users around the room. Now, I did a funny video on this recently where I filmed some cooking in my kitchen. I'm going to roll that for you now so that you can see exactly how this presenter tracking mode works on the Poly Studio device.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Cooking with Polly. I'm your chef Neil Fluester, and we're going to be cooking up a classic recipe of a huddle room with a new twist. The new twist is that this is going to be great for distance learning, for teaching applications, as well as even town hall meetings. What we're going to need is a pot to mix all our ingredients, and we're going to need those ingredients. So the first ingredient we need is noise block. Now, traditional noise block as an ingredient is well used across our portfolio, but this is a new version of noise block. It's so cool that it needs to be kept in the fridge. So let me grab this out for you. You can see it here. This is the new version of noise block. Now, the thing with it is it's a bit of a challenge to get out the packet, so let's do that now. There we go, get that into the pot. That's our noise block. Next up, what we're going to need is a little bit of acoustic fence. Now, the great thing about the acoustic fence is we can keep it in different locations and even adjust those locations. Now, I keep mine way up high, but you can adjust yours accordingly. So as I move up here to grab it out of the cupboard, here it is, you can see, we need to then put that into our mix and make sure that's well located in there. Next up, very important. Now, a lot of people scrimp on this ingredient and go for a really low quality version of this ingredient, but we at Poly make sure that we have the highest possible quality camera. 4K sensor with advanced production rules for tracking and framing. So get that into the mix. Now, what makes this recipe quite unique is obviously we want a little bit of Wi-Fi management. So we'll get our Wi-Fi management, pop that into the mix as well. And then you need to give it a really, really good stir. Make sure all those ingredients are nicely mixed up and folded up together. And then you need to get that into the oven and give it a nice cook to get it nice and toasty and warm. So you've got a cooking tradition. Here is one I have made earlier. This is the Poly Studio, and I'm showing off the new version 1.3 of the presenter mode. And presenter mode allows the studio to track in real time the presenter or the teacher as they're moving around the classroom or the environment. It's great to be able to use for distance learning or even town hall meetings.
So, I'm a customer. I've got multiple devices deployed across a business. You mentioned there about the ability to count faces in a room. How can I, as an IT administrator, manage that remotely?
Yeah, Poly has, again, although these are in many cases USB devices, we still have inbuilt management in the device itself. So our Poly Studio device, again, although it's a USB camera and an audio subsystem, it's got built-in IP networking. So you can register it to your network for software updates and for out-of-box simplicity of deployment. But moreover, that's where you're going to get those statistics. It's where you're going to get what we call insights into the meeting room. So Studio X Series has those insights into the room. How many people are using the meeting room? How many calls did you make? How long were the calls? How many times were there people talking on the calls? How many times did you book meetings but no one showed up? How many times did people show up and there wasn't a meeting booked? Those insights into the meeting room all come through what we call PolyLens. Now, PolyLens provides three main levels of management. First is that out-of-box experience. You've got your shiny new Poly product, and you want to be able to then go and easily deploy it across your estate. PolyLens will help with that out-of-box experience. So when you take your Poly Studio X Series out of the box, there's a simple QR code. You scan the QR code from the screen once you've dropped it on top of the screen, plugged in your power, plugged in Ethernet, plugged in HDMI. It's as simple as that to deploy. And then again, you can QR code scan it, register it to PolyLens, and then the lens will then allow you to set it up in Teams or Starleaf or GoToMeeting or any of the other Avoira platforms that we have. Once you've got it set up, that's when you can then move into the next phase, so the ongoing management and maintenance of that product. So the ability to be able to, as I say, get insights from the product, see how it's being used, and your day-to-day reporting. And then lastly, the kind of maintenance piece. So again, if there's some software updates that we bring out, some new features, again, that presenter mode I showed you in the last video, that's a new feature. We've just enabled it on the product. So a software update provides that additional layer of functionality and those additional features for our users. So again, out of the box experience, day-to-day management, as well as an in-field upgrade and support on those devices as well, all provided through PolyLens. And I know that Avoira also have the ability to provide a full VNOC solution. So either you can have the PolyLens and the Poly management tools to manage the devices yourselves, or you can actually back that up to Avoira, who can then provide that service for you remotely. If you don't want the hassle and heartache of having to manage your devices yourself, you can actually have Avoira manage that for you.
And in terms of sort of aftercare, so service packages, care packages, warranties, that sort of thing, would you recommend anybody looking to purchase these solutions look at those and take those as well at the point of order, although they are simple to deploy and simple to use?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as I say, we try and make the systems as simple and easy to set up as we can. But with any environment, there are complexities. There's also a whole bunch of prerequisites. If you're registering these devices to Microsoft Teams, you're going to need to hook it into your Active Directory, register it to Teams, and set it up with all of those other network details. You probably need to put it onto a separate VLAN for networking. And again, that's where Avoira's skills can come in with their engineering resources and their service and support contracts that will not only go and deploy the device and make sure it's set up for the right room and set up in the right way, but then also will maintain that through its lifespan to make sure that there's no issues with regards to its setup. And you're going to get all of those software updates and all those new features as they come. And again, that's all provided, I guess, through Avoira's great capability that you guys offer.
And if we've got a customer that is, more than capable of kind of managing that side themselves, they've got a big IT team that, they're quite techie minded, the services they can get directly from Poly, the services, warranties, that sort of thing. Again, that's something that we'd recommend, right, with every sale. Even if somebody is very capable, we definitely want to.
Yeah, it's peace of mind. You can always go onto YouTube and find a video of how to run a nuclear reactor, but not sure you'd probably want to run a nuclear reactor. So let the experts deal with what they're good at. And again, we provide a lot of information, and you can actually go and set these devices up yourselves. But it's always good. Again, Avoira have got some great expertise in being able to make sure that they're set up properly and running properly. So you have that choice. Run it yourself. And again, some of the more simpler devices like the Studio USB are more BYOD. They're more kind of high-end webcam solutions. So again, in those kind of rooms, it might be something you want to set up yourselves. When it comes to the more complicated integrations with some of your larger meeting room devices, where you've got ceiling microphones, multiple cameras, multiple screens, that's when Avoira can really help you expand that capability and make sure you get the best possible experience in those meeting spaces.
Absolutely. Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Neil, for joining us for the first Avoira session webinar. Really appreciate that. I hope everybody found that useful. And of course, if you're looking at, starting one of these projects, you want to do a proof of concept, virtual demonstration, anything at all in terms of these poly video solutions, please do contact us directly at info@avoira.com.